Thank you so much once again. We're so excited to have you join us today. It's going to be a conversation, right? And I know that you are experts, so and I know that the audience definitely are going to gain a lot from this conversation. So as much as possible, pour it all out. Pour it all out to us, right? So I have some, few questions here, and we're going to do this, I think, just for about 40 minutes thereabout, or let's say 35 minutes. So our time starts now. So by the top of our hour, we should be done. So I'll just read what this experts or panel session is all about, so you can watch out for the keywords even as our panelists speak. Maximizing business value in the data-driven era, insights from industry experts. So these are industry experts. Now, in today's data-driven world, businesses have an unprecedented opportunity to leverage data to unlock valuable insights, drive strategic decision-making, and gain a competitive edge. The sheer volume of data generated globally each day is staggering, with approximately 2.5 million terabytes created daily. However, the true value lies in the ability to extract meaningful insights from these data and translate them into actionable strategies. This panel session will provide valuable insight from industry experts on how businesses can extract maximum value from their data-driven initiative. At the end of this session, participants will leave with a comprehensive understanding of the importance of data-driven decision-making, real-world example of businesses that have successfully leveraged data for competitive advantage, real-world example of use cases that can drive competitive advantage, strategies for building a data-driven culture within their organization, insights into the challenges and pitfalls to avoid when embarking on data-driven transformation, and then knowledge of emerging trends and technologies that can enhance data-driven strategies. So I'm going to start with the questions, and quite a number of them, but lovely questions here. So I'm going to start with Dr. Dumebi. Now, Dr. Dumebi, I know you are a man of many experience, and would like to know what would you say are the key drivers, behind the shift towards data-driven decision-making in businesses? What are the things that drive it?
Yeah, so in my opinion, businesses started to realize that they had a lot of data. I remember one company I used to work for, before they hired me, they said that they were disappointed that their customers are using the business's data better than they are. And they could see very quickly that those customers were actually generating significant revenue and value from their own data. So I think people start realizing very quickly, this can be monetized. This can be converted into intelligence. It can be converted into decision-making, turned into strategy, turned into value. And then, of course, people like all of you here have all the skills and capabilities, and businesses start realizing, great, I can bring in these talents, they're in abundance, and therefore they can come in, they can help me be more data competent, and they can help me leverage that data to provide value for my business. And then sort of, that was the match made in heaven. Technology, infrastructure became cheaper, became easier to implement, resources became cheaper, easier to implement, and more businesses were generating more examples of how you can use data in significant ways, and then businesses sort of started following suit. And then, of course, nowadays, companies like generative AI has sort of taken a huge front line, and all businesses can see very clearly the massive value that it can generate. And because they can see where data can be used, they're now realizing that it's even more important to get all of that housekeeping and data infrastructure ready for them to really value the data. So it's all, I guess if I was to summarize, businesses could now see more clearly the linear relationship between data and value, and that sort of got things going.
Amazing. Wow, thank you so much. Businesses can now see the linear relationship between data and value. Please give Dr. Dumebi a round of applause. Thank you so much. So I'm going to come to Fred. And this question, is I think is an important question on how can organizations foster a data-driven culture, from top to bottom. How exactly can they do that?
Okay, good morning once again, everybody. First of all, I must say thank you to the organizers and everyone and for having me here. I'm sure by the time you saw or heard our profiles, you could tell that I was the only one who wasn't a data scientist per se, but someone who consumes data that much, because by my level as a total quality senior manager, we use data a lot. So thank you again for bringing me. And if there's anybody here who is not a data scientist, I am here for you. I represent that class of people that consume data. So how can organizations, repeat that again, how can organizations
foster a data-driven culture? Yes.
I'll tell you a story. It didn't come to me naturally. So I grew by the ranks, in MTN Nigeria. I remember that those days when I have a problem, I would always state the problem, go to my boss, and I tell him, we have a problem. And then she would ask, so what's the solution? And I would give a solution, and I would, profess some solutions. Then she would now ask me, so is there any data behind your solution? She was always saying that I make decisions by the rule of thumb. So I learned the hard way that, you're safe using data. So for organizations, just the same kind of thing that my boss was doing with me, that is the same thing that is becoming prevalent in every organization. And just like he said, the first speaker said, you find out that there is so much data, but because we feel that I've seen this problem before, you just tend to make a decision and then start going. I'll give you a typical example. When, because we're a customer-driven organization, we were thinking that if we opened on Sundays, right? If we opened our stores on Sundays, customers will actually come in, because we're thinking of people like everyone here who works 9 to 5. So we're saying that people are busy and that most people will want to come to the store when, on weekends, when they are not going to work. So we should open the stores on Sunday. We just made that decision without any data. No, nothing. Blind decision, and we started opening on Sundays. Morning till evening, nobody would come in. We opened for weeks, months, spanning 2 years. And then after a week, after a month, people started trickling in. But never enough to justify the amount of resources that we put up on Sundays. Never did we get that kind of return on that initiative, to justify why we were opening on Sundays. All our stores will be open. The generators are up. Everything is up. The cleaner is there. The, water, everything, the staff is there. We're paying overtime because we didn't use data. But by the time we ran that operation for some time, everybody started saying, now we have enough data to make another decision. So that's how organizations actually foster. So you have to force it. People at the top have to start demanding that we have statistics or we have data to be able to make informed decisions.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There must be that clear picture of why we need data, and that will help drive culture. Thank you so much for sharing. Now I'm going to come to Dr. Raphael with this question. You are a chartered statistician, a chartered scientist. And this question here says, that what are the common challenges that organizations face when transitioning to a data-driven approach, and how can they address those challenges? What are the challenges they face, and how can they address those challenges?
Okay. The challenges they face are largely as a result of getting into making the decision to become data-driven without necessarily putting the actions that are required to do it. You have organizations say things like that, and then they don't put structures in place. They just appoint someone to say, now you're a data champion, and that's all. And for a data-driven organization, there are things that you need to put in place. So for example, just like you have your organization structure, where you have the CEO down to the cleaners and everybody, when it comes to data, there is also a structure. There are those who will take strategic actions. When you do your analysis and the result comes out, someone is going to make a business decision based on that result, right? So that's the strategic person. There is someone who will review the work that you have done, right? That's more or less a tactical person. Then you doing the work is more operational. So if you look at it using that three-layer structure, you realize that you can actually do a lot in terms of how you can address the common pitfalls. Data quality is the major one, and data quality can easily be addressed with things like data governance, right? But having data governance framework or policy in place is just a means to an end. That policy needs to be operationalized. So for example, you have made a decision within your business that the way you will write date, and I like to use this example a lot, is day, month, year, right? Which means nobody within your organization should ever write date in any other format. Month, day, year, year, day, month. That is the data quality issue, as simple as it is. Because there are situations where you want to say 10th of May, and then someone writes 5th of October. Then that becomes a data quality issue. So as granular and as simple as that, you need to ensure, right, that you follow the steps. And one of the other components, apart from putting that structure in place, is also ensure management commitment. Anything you do around establishing a data-driven business, right, must have management commitment. And then those are the guys who would actually make the final decision on your data.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Management commitments, having a structure, that's amazing. Now let's go into AI a bit. We have Mayo here. And Mayo, this question is for you. It says that generative AI has shown great promise. How can businesses effectively incorporate generative AI into their strategies to enhance business efficiencies?
Okay. So in the early periods when I was working with LangChain, one of the things we noticed was that a lot of companies kind of jumped on the AI wave, mostly out of FOMO, so the fear of missing out. And when we started working with these companies, we realized quickly that they don't have an AI issue, they actually have a data issue. Right? So for a lot of companies, the first thing they need to understand is that AI, machine learning, data is all in the same realm. So you can't just jump straight to AI if your data infrastructure is off, which is kind of what all the other panelists have talked about. You need to address your data infrastructure, the quality of your data, the way you structure your data, the way you update your data. The quality needs to be high because all the AI is just, it's using a large language model to train on data. So if the data is off, then what the model is going to output is going to be off too. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of businesses don't have complete stakeholder buy-in. So what do I mean? So ironically, in my experience, the biggest blocker or the biggest enemy of progress, unfortunately, is the CTO of most companies. So why is that? And why I think about it, it makes sense, right? That's not what they were trained in. They were probably trained in, traditional Azure, SQL, that kind of stuff. So now this AI thing to them is a threat. So I come in, consultant, hey, we want to revamp, we want to da-da-da. The guy is shaking because he's like, are you going to replace me? So there needs to be complete buy-in because usually it's the CEOs who go to all these conferences and they see what contemporary companies in the industry are doing abroad and they're like, okay, let's do it. But your CTO may not buy in to it. Your existing data analyst too might be a bit scared. Are you trying to automate me away? So everyone needs to, it's a cultural shift. It's not just, you're not just bringing in this technology and everyone is just going to buy in. So that's the second thing. There needs to be a clear understanding of the data sources that the company is working with and how that integrates with AI. So I'll give you an example. So we've worked with a pharmaceutical company. They have a ton of information about the drugs they have and it's stored in their database, right? So it's very clear where we're getting the data from, right? That you can then use to train the AI model and then generate the result you're looking for. But if you're not clear, for example, so you just say something like, okay, we want, the ability to, ask questions about the performance of our finances, right? But you don't have a clear route to pull that data out. You don't have APIs. You don't have, a clear store of those documents or that data. Then again, it makes life. So again, it's going back to the whole data structure, infrastructure being in place. Once all of that's kind of there, then the next thing is, how the company wants to basically implement the solution. What tools do they want to use? There are a lot of tools out there, obviously. I'm biased towards LangChain because I was early there. But there are other tools out there that or frameworks that a company can use to basically begin this process of, training, creating their own ChatGPT, but for their own data, effectively. You have frameworks like LangChain. You have models like OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on. You have what's known as vector stores, which help you to perform similarity search on your documents. There are a ton of enterprise solutions there. So it's about then choosing which ones of those tools kind of suits the company's goals. And then there's a decision, the architectural decision of, do we want to use a model off the shelf, or do we want to basically train, do a fine tuning of a model? In that case, you probably are thinking more about privacy. You don't want to put your data out there to OpenAI. Maybe you're afraid that they might use it for their own training. So then you're dealing with on-prem deployments of your own model. So these are all the kind of decisions that a company has to make. Obviously, hiring the right talents and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mayo. Thank you. I mean, that's a masterclass on generative AI for businesses. Thank you so much. And I'm still going to come back to you. But before then, let me ask Dr. Dumebi this very important question. You've talked about steps towards data-driven businesses. Now, this question says, how can businesses effectively measure the success of their data-driven initiative? How can we really measure it? Is there a way to do that?
Yes. So that's actually quite difficult for businesses to do, because that at the moment that they can start really measuring the performance of their data-driven strategy is when the business is solid. To get there, the business, as Marwa mentioned, needs to be aligned. The CTO needs to be on board, his team needs to be on board, and the transformation needs to be done. Most businesses fail deploying data-driven strategy because they don't have commitment from the team. So that's key. Once the operations of the business is aligned and you're able to measure output, then you're there. So a good example is I am a financial service company, and I'm now using data to make lending decisions. Before, my market people go out there, they'll meet people, they'll be selling loans. Now they're going through a website, they're going through an app, they're going through an agent with a tablet, and they're collecting information to onboard the customer. Before, subjective, you're wearing a nice dress, you're wearing a nice suit, you're good for a loan. Now, data-driven, you're using bank statements, you're using credit bureau information, and you're making decisions as quickly. What you then do is see the output. The output be, for this example, will be arrear rates. How many of these people are paying us back on time? Now, why that is difficult is because that information needs to be precise. So what that means is, if you are using data now, you cannot have any non-data elements influencing the outcome. It means that these customers went through this process and got there, not that someone intercepted that data, manipulated it, or someone spoke to the customer, coached them on what to say. Or, there's a lot of ways you can pollute the process or the operations. And therefore, the outcome you see is inaccurate. And then you might say, oh, it's not working, or something has gone wrong. So the answer to the question is that you need to have the measurement KPIs and metrics to observe the outcomes, but the most important thing is to make sure that the operations is precise. The operations is purely data-led. The operations is not polluted by any other influence. And I'd say that that's where most companies struggle. You have to understand that if you've been doing business a certain way for a very long time, your people have been doing business a certain way a very long time, it is very difficult to say, guys, let's step back, let the machine do it. Very, 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 very difficult. So you will always see leaks. But in my opinion, suffice the leadership is committed, suffice the company wants to achieve those outcomes. It's all about patience and precision. It may not happen initially or immediately. It will happen over time. But as long as the improvements are there and progress is made, then companies will get there. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I know our time is fast spent, but I'm going to quickly ask this question, Dr. Raphael. Dr. Raphael, and this is a question around challenges that you are a chartered statistician, you're a consultant. What would you say are the common challenges that organizations face when they are transitioning into becoming a data-driven organization? And in your experience, how can they address these challenges?
Okay, I think I'll pick it from how they can address these challenges. Likely what they need to do first is set an objective. Remember, we talk about the structure. The structure is not a structure if there is no objective they're going to drive, right? So there needs to be an objective, and then they then need to democratize data within the business, and then take what we call citizen development, so that everyone within the business, right, is upskilled to know how to get around the use of data. And in fact, there are new ideas coming up on how to even make that more efficient. I think that's the idea around edge computing. Edge computing is helping you to process your data as close to the user as possible. So which means if you're able to process data as close to customers, to the user as close as possible, then the person is able to make informed decision. And if every user or every staff of your organization can make business decision, immediately they're processing their data, then imagine how that will trickle down to becoming a data-driven business.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much. And last question for Winfred is a question around, you've talked about stakeholders. Now, in your experience, how can one, especially we have a lot of data scientists, data analysts here, how can they convince a critical stakeholder? So maybe the CEO, the CTO, just like, Amayo said, how can they really convince them to take on data for driving decisions in their organization?
Thanks again. I think that is honestly very easy in today's world. Like Mario and Raphael has said. The results. So if I hear maybe before they would have to hire marketers, put them in a car blindly. They see me dressed the way I'm dressed, and they think I can actually take up a loan of 10 million because I am dressed 10 million. You get what I'm saying? So they give me a loan of 10 million, and unfortunately, I'm not able to pay them back because they are not looking at my bank history. They are not seeing that I have never even had a 1 million naira in my account before, as much as I dress $1 million. So with that, I'm sure that today they make better decisions in terms of the kind of people that they give loans because they are looking at your historical transactions. So it's very easy. This whole data thing is honestly very interesting. And I dare say that it's been there ever since. It's just that people have never really earned the even up to the native doctors, I must say, honestly. So I'm a bit of a storyteller, so I must tell this story. When we were much younger, my cousin used to tell us a story about native doctors. And I didn't understand that he was trying to tell us that native doctors actually use data to do what they're doing. It was after much I found out that that's what he was trying to say, that it's all about using data and psychology. Because he told us a very funny story then that there was a woman who went to a native doctor and said to the native doctor that her business wasn't doing well because her competition was actually using jazz, using juju. And the native doctor said, yes, she must. He said, because when she comes out, nobody buys her food, but they buy her competition's food, finish everybody. So the man said, oh, good. So where is this your shop? He said, it's around, they have a building complex, a string of building complex, and so it's the workers that buy these things. So it's okay. When does your competition come out? So the competition, the lady comes out by, say, 6 a.m. When do you come out? She comes out by 8 a.m. So before she comes out, the workers that have gathered for the day, they had finished eating. So when she comes out, nobody's hungry anymore and nobody's going to buy. So the native doctor says, no problem. Got some leaves, did some things, made some chants, and then told her, you must be there by 5:45 a.m. every morning. And by 5:45 a.m. every morning, she was there. And before her competition comes, the workers has finished her food. So you see the data worked, huh? The juju works, huh? So so just when you ask me how would competition, it's when you see results. And this is just a very clear case. This woman will continue going back to that native doctor. Unfortunately, the native doctor is just using statistics. And I dare say that today, if native doctors know the power in statistics and in data, they would even become better native doctors than what they were doing
Amazing. Thank you so much. I mean, that's a fantastic one. Wow, our time is fast spent, but really we want to thank you. I mean, it's been an amazing time. Okay, yes, let's hear from Dr. Raphael on that.
Yeah, thanks, Winifred, for that. And I want to use that to also call our attention to some things. When you do data, you are like a software engineer, like a software developer. All the things that they do in the software development lifecycle also applies to you. What the native doctor has done is requirement gathering. right? Understand the objective, the scope of work, and all of those things. The problem we data people have is that we jump into the data when they say forecast revenue. You just jump into it. Why am I forecasting revenue? You need to collect that requirement. And that is key, right, to solving the problem.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Honestly, I want to hear from Dr. to maybe if you have anything on this conversation around, managing competition, the challenges using data.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think sometimes, particularly a lot of us here, you understand data and you look for the answer in the data. And sometimes the answers are not in the data, they are elsewhere. A good example is, and I'll always go back to loan examples, is you might see that people are defaulting all of a sudden after New Year, after Christmas. And you just think, oh, these are all bad customers, they're all defaulting. But then you have to take into consideration what else is happening, macroeconomic variables. In this case, it's Christmas. They all go out, they all spend money, they all celebrate, they overspend, and they were not prepared for the loan. So the data is there, it says they're good borrowers, says they have good credit history. Why did they default in this time? It's because you need to take consideration of other things. So I think it's important to note that sometimes you do need to be more involved with the customer than necessarily with just the data. Understand their circumstances and their considerations and context around what they're doing, and that helps a lot. It's called data science because there is a lot of research involved beyond the data itself. So you have to, trust me on this, I know it may seem difficult sometimes, you have to get out of the laptops, get out of the numbers and look at the customer directly and understand them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I want to hear from Mayo. I know, coming from the AI perspective, Mayo, how would you say organizations, right, can also, mitigate risk, right, and make the most of their data to drive competitive advantage, from a generative AI perspective?
Yeah, so when you say mitigate risk, I'm thinking more in terms of, when they do decide to use it, preventing issues like, data leakage, for example.
Yeah.
So again, back to the structuring issue, there's the choice of deploying your own model, right? You don't have to use the popular ones out there. Obviously, you would need your own machine learning operations team and your own pipeline. But the advantage of that is that you have your own in-house model trained on your own data. So there's no privacy leak in that case. Other risks would be in terms of internal stakeholders that you don't want to access certain types of data. So maybe you only want certain executives to have access to certain types of data. You would need to build a pipeline to address those things as well. I think for most companies at this point, the risk for them it's mostly their fear is just privacy. They've accumulated a lot of proprietary data over many years. And their fear is, if we go into this thing, would it leak, right? So I think those are the main things that companies think about. But for people who are in-house developing the solutions for the company, they need to obviously do the best practice development, security measures in terms of proper credentials and authorization and stuff like that.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sure we've had a fantastic time at this panel session. So you want to give our panelists another round of applause. Amazing. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of the panel session. Winfred, thank you so much. On behalf of the organizers, we want to present this award to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on board. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have this for you. Thank you. Talks. Thank you so much. All right, please give our panelists another round of applause. I mean, what a wonderful session we've just had. Thank you so much. All right, so now